Hello, everybody, and welcome to this next episode of the Bukowski Book Club. Now, I even got a Kowski on here, doing his hair. Yeah. It's the next part, and you get so alone at times that it just makes sense. We are going to read some poems. Oh, and also, we haven't even talked about how awful the audiobook is. The guy they have reading the book is absolutely horrendous. HarperCollins, Echo, Audible, try, please. I know you don't really like Bukowski, but please, for the love of God, can you just, put somebody in charge of that who gives the tiniest fuck? Please? That was... half the poems in that audiobook are they're almost unlistenable. It's awful. And now I'm going to read some of my favorite poems out of the second section of You Get So Alone. So again, we are starting from page 85, and we're going to go through Glenn Miller on page 152. Okay? So let's see what's what. I have all sorts of notes in here. Okay, yeah, so we have this one poem about taxes, helping the old. That's good. I stood behind him waiting my turn. That was good. Bad Times at the Third and Vermont Hotel. I just like that because that was my old neighborhood. And when he talks about going into this bar, I don't know why I assume this, because the only bar on 3rd and Vermont in that intersection, I'm sure there used to be other bars. And there is that one little club right there, but that bar is the Monte Carlo on 3rd. And I always wonder if that's, because it looks like it's been there since 100 years ago. Fuck, I'll read it. Alabama was a sneak and a thief, and he came to my room when I was drunk, and each time I got up, he shoved me back down. You prick, I told him, you know I can take you. He just shoved me down again. When I sober up, I said, I'm gonna kick you all the way to hell. He kept pushing me around. I finally caught him a good one right over the temple, and he backed off and left. It was a couple days later, I got even. I fucked his girl. Then I went down and knocked on his door. Well, Alabama, I fucked your woman, and now I'm gonna kick you all the way to hell. The poor guy started crying. He put his hands over his face and just cried. And I stood there and watched. I said, I'm sorry, Alabama. Then I left him there and went back to my room. We were all alkies, and none of us had jobs. All we had was each other. Even then, my so-called woman was in some bar or somewhere. I hadn't seen her in a couple days. I had a bottle of port left. I uncorked it and took it down to Alabama's room. Said, how about a drink, rebel? He looked up, stood up, went for 2 glasses. The master plan. I think this is bullshit, by the way. I'm just going to say this out loud, and we'll talk about this more. The master plan. Starving and a Philadelphia winter, trying to be a writer. I wrote and drank and then stopped writing and concentrated on the drinking. It was another art form. If you can't have any luck with one thing, you try another. Of course, I had been practicing on the drinking form since the age of 15, and there was much competition in that field also. It was a world full of drunks and writers and drunk writers, and so I became a starving drunk instead of a starving writer. The best thing was the instant result. And I soon became the biggest and best drunk in the neighborhood, and maybe the whole city. It sure as hell beats sitting around waiting for those rejection slips from the New Yorker and the Atlantic Monthly. Of course, I never really considered quitting the writing game. I just wanted to give it a 10-year rest, figuring if I got famous too early, I wouldn't have anything left for the stretch run like I have now. Thank you. With the drinking still thrown in. That whole bit that he has tried to say that like he could have been famous at a young age, but he didn't think he was ready and he wanted to hold off until, later so he would have enough in him. He had no fucking idea that that was why he was doing that. And when he said he didn't do it because he didn't think he was ready, it wasn't because he didn't think he could handle the fame. It's just he hadn't swallowed his own tail yet. He was scared, just like he was scared about everything. And that's okay. It's okay to be scared. But the machismo, well, I only did it because I wanted to make sure I had enough left in me. Dude, you wrote more than anyone on the fucking planet. You were fine. It was going to be okay, I don't know. Okay. I have a nice little note there. This is my vanishing act. When I got sick of the bar, and I sometimes did, I had a place to go. It was a tall field of grass, an abandoned graveyard. I didn't consider this to be a morbid pastime. It just seemed to be the best place to be. It offered a generous cure to the vicious hangover. Through the grass I could see the stones. Many were tilted at strange angles against gravity as though they must fall, but I never saw one fall, although there were many of those in the yard. It was cool and dark with a breeze, and I often slept there. I was never bothered. Each time I returned to the bar after an absence, it was always the same with them. Where the hell you been? We thought you died. I was their bar freak. They needed me to make themselves feel better. Just like at times I needed that graveyard. And then I wrote, come up with a good line and work backwards from it to make it. So that's just that was a good line that tied everything together. So figure out what those lines are and then write a poem about that. And then you have stuff like the 16-bit Intel 8088 chip that actually dates this book and dates Bukowski. So I will read this to you. With an Apple Macintosh, you can't run Radio Shack programs in its disk drive, nor can a Commodore 64 drive read a file you have created on an IBM personal computer. Both K-Pro and Osborne computers use the CP/M operating system, but can't read each other's handwriting, for they write on, disks in different ways. The Tandy 2000 runs MS-DOS, but can't use most programs produced for the IBM personal computer unless certain bits and bytes are altered. But the wind still blows over Savannah, and in the spring the turkey buzzard struts and flounces before his hens. None of that stuff exists anymore. It's so fucking funny, dude. Oh my god. This was around the time when he left the electric typewriter and went to the computer. Sitting here watching the second hand on the Timex go around and around. This will hardly be a night to remember. Sitting here searching for blackheads on the back of my neck as other men enter the sheets with dolls of flame. I look into myself and find perfect emptiness. I am out of cigarettes, and I don't even have a gun to point. This writer's block is my only possession. The second hand on the Timex still goes around and around. I always wanted to be a writer. Now I am one who can't. Might as well go downstairs and watch late-night TV with the wife. She'll ask me how it went. I'll wave my hand nonchalantly, settle down next to her, and watch the glass people fail as I have failed. I'm going to walk down the stairway now. What a sight. An empty man being careful not to trip and bang his empty head. So one of the things I really like about this poem here is that 2 poems later, so that was on page 104, and now this is on page 107. This is called I'll Take It. Maybe I'm going crazy. That's all right. But these poems keep rising to the top of my head with more and more force. Now, after the oceans of booze that I have consumed, it would only seem that attrition would be my rightful reward as I continue to consume, while the madhouses, skid rows, and graveyards are filled with the likes of me. Yet each night as I sit down to this machine with my bottle, the poems flare and jump out on and on, roaring in the glee of easy power. 65 years dancing, my mouth curling into a tiny grin as these keys keep meting out a substantial energy of cockeyed miracle. The gods have been kind to me through this lifestyle that would have killed an ox of a man, and I'm no ox of a man. I sensed from the beginning, of course, that there was a strange gnawing inside me. But I never dreamed this luck, this absolute shot of grace. My death will at most seem an afterthought. Now, the reason why I wanted to read that one right after reading Zero is because he went from having this horrible writer's block to then, like, just days later, like, having shit pour out of him, and it be like him thanking the gods for all of these great poems he's writing. Okay? So, I just want that to be known that, like, nothing is forever. Okay? Every fucking thing is temporary. All right? You got this. I got this. We got this. Okay? Putrefaction on page 105, I do want to read too. Of late, I had this thought that this country has gone backwards 4 or 5 decades, and that all the social advancement, the good feeling of person toward person has been washed away and replaced by the same old bigotries. We have more than ever the selfish wants of power, the disregard for the weak, the old, the impoverished, the helpless. We are replacing want with war, salvation with slavery. We have wasted the gains. We have become rapidly less. We have our bomb. It is our fear, our damnation, and our shame. Now something so sad has hold of us that the breath leaves and we can't even cry. And I think that's more true now than it was when he wrote it. The last shot. Here we are once again, the last drink, the last poem, decades of this splendid luck. Another drunken AM, and not on the drunk tank floor tonight, waiting for the black pimp to get off the phone so I could put through my one aloud call. So many of those AMs too. It took me a long time to find the most interesting person to drink with. Myself, like this, now reaching to my left for the last glass of the blood of the Lamb. Starting fast on page 118. We each at times should remember the most elevated and lucky moment of our lives. For me, it was being a very young man and sleeping penniless and friendless upon a park bench in a strange city, which doesn't say much for all those many decades which followed. And I think that's bullshit too. I think he has to say that so he doesn't feel like that was a hard time in his life. But the hard time is the thing that, according to him, made him It's such bullshit. Especially someone coming out of the Depression. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. But a lot of the poems he wrote, he might have been writing things like that because he knew people who were like him were reading his stuff and would write him and call him and try to have him give the answers. Like, what are the answers to life? What's the meaning of all this? So if he writes poems about, yeah, the best thing that ever happened to me was being penniless on that park bench. Like, oh, I'm penniless on this park bench. Oh, okay. Yeah, but now he's in his gilded San Pedro tower, and he's not going back to the park bench. So... for the concerned, on page 123. If you get married, they'll think you're finished. If you are without a woman, they'll think you're incomplete. A large portion of my readers want me to keep writing about bedding down with mad women and streetwalkers. Also about being in jails and hospitals, or starving, or puking my guts out. I agree that complacency hardly engenders an immortal literature, but neither does repetition. For those readers now sick at heart, believing that I'm a contented man, please have some cheer. Agony sometimes changes form, but it never ceases for anybody. Damn. So good. On page 124, there's a poem called A Funny Guy, and I have this one line circled. And once great thoughts often with time become useless and stupid. I hear ya. Shoes on page 125. When you're young, a pair of female high-heeled shoes just sitting alone in the closet can fire your bones. When you're old, it's just a pair of shoes without anybody in them, and just as well. Okay, we'll read this one. The finest of the breed. There's nothing to discuss, there's nothing to remember, there's nothing to forget. It's sad and it's not sad. Seems the most sensible thing a person can do is sit with a drink in hand as the walls wave their goodbye smiles. One comes through it all with a certain amount of efficiency and bravery, then leaves. Some accept the possibility of God to help them get through, others take it straight on. And to these I drink tonight. On page 138, there's a poem, the end of the poem, called Final Story. Hello again. My computer decided that there was too much stuff on it, and so we had to stop. But then it took me a good, I don't know how long it's been, maybe like an hour and a half of deleting shit and moving shit and getting shit off of my computer so I could finish this video. So we're going to finish this up, and I pulled a chair under a light so I could read this without having to like turn my body sideways. Okay? So where were we? I think I was about to read the last line of the poem, Final Story. The price of creation is never too high. The price of living with other people always is. This is true, because I'm losing my fucking mind right now. Just a heads up. It's difficult. I'm not used to it. The last line of Friends Within the Darkness on page 139, or it's actually on page 140, and it's the last, 4 lines. Sometimes all we need to be able to continue alone are the dead, rattling the walls that close us in. We are getting close to the end. Oh, and then this poem, O Tempora, O Mores, on page 145. I don't believe this. It's like I don't believe it in the sense that I just don't agree. Like, obviously, there are some people who like to have sex because they just want to come. And then there's other people who like to have sex because the whole act is fascinating. And then there are other people who like to have sex because every single part of a person is intriguing and exciting to look at, to feel, to touch, to smell, to taste. You know what I'm saying? And then there's other people who just want to get a hard and then that's it. Okay? So, this poem here. Now they shove it at us like a McDonald's hamburger on a platter. And then I just wrote bullshit at the end of the poem. I do not agree. And a long dress is fine. And if a woman is, I don't want to say it like this, but like there are some people who have a body for a certain type of outfit. And then there's other people who have a certain type of body for a different type of outfit. And then there's other people who just have interesting parts. And it doesn't matter if they're wearing a long dress or a fucking straitjacket. It's still going to be hot. Do you see what I'm saying? There's hardly anything as beautiful as a woman in a long dress. I've seen some women in long dresses that look like they were like shoved in it. And it did not look natural. The dress isn't the thing. The person under the dress is the thing. And if you're just getting turned on by fabric, like you go to Joann's and rub your cock on everything there. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. And then we have a couple really great poems about John Fonte, like The Passing of a Great One on page 147, and then The Wine of Forever on page 149. Here's a cool one. And this is how you steal like an artist, guys. In case you were wondering what that means, how do you steal like an artist? This poem called True on page 151. One of Lorca's best lines is, agony, always agony. Think of this when you kill a cockroach, or pick up a razor to shave, or awaken in the morning to face the sun. That is how you steal like an artist. You say, I'm taking this line from Lorca that says, agony, always agony. The people who used to steal Bukowski's work all the time, that he would always catch, like, they would have just written the poem, when I kill a cockroach, agony, always agony. When I pick up a razor to shave, agony, always agony. Even awaken to the morning to face the sun, agony, always agony. Like, that's how the thief would have stolen that line to write a poem. But since Bukowski was like, one of Lorca's best lines, it's like I'm telling you exactly, like this was Lorca. I didn't write this. But now I'm adding to it. You see what I'm saying? That's brilliant. And then we have this Glenn Miller poem on page 152, and that's the end. All right, so next week, next time, we are going to read the poems Emily Bukowski from page 153 all the way down to Gone on page 240. Okay, so it's basically the third page of the table of contents. Okay, that's what we're going to be going over. What poems were your favorite? Which ones did you like? Which ones did you not like? Were there any lines that you loved that I left out? Leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you next time for more You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense. Type hard, guys. Join the crew, and I will talk to you all later.